I went to Trinity College of Florida, and it's a very, very small school that most people have never heard of. Its only claim to fame is that Billy Graham went there in the 30s. Actually, there's been a couple people who've been there that are kind of notable. Bert Parsons, who maybe if you're Reformed, you know who he is, and the rapper KB from Reach Records graduated from there. In fact, he graduated in my same class and stuff, and he's a great rapper, and he's one of my favorites. It's a great school with amazing professors, and this is not a video to sell you on Trinity or to get your students to go there. They don't pay me enough to tell you that. But let me tell you what I am going to tell you about Trinity College. It taught me how to divide God's word properly, to kind of read the scriptures, to break it down. It gave me awesome skills for hermeneutics, for my homiletics, to teach me how to break down passages, to preach. Like I had this professor named DePronio, who was the most intimidating professor ever, and he was my preaching professor. And I remember I went up there to preach Ephesians 2:1-10, and I was petrified because this professor was going to grade my tests and grade my preaching. It was so scary. But through that, my time at Trinity has taught me so much about how to preach and teach and handle God's word properly. But there are a couple things they didn't teach me well. And so what I want to do is talk to you guys about the 5 things that I feel like I've heard from many people about going to Bible college and majoring in student ministry or some kind of ministry in that regard, and what they didn't teach you, and stuff that you kind of had to learn in the streets, right? I learned a lot of stuff in the trenches of student ministry, and I think there's a reason why you don't learn this stuff in Bible college, but you have to learn in the trenches. And so this is 5 things that I learned, rather 5 things I didn't learn in Bible college. The first thing that I didn't learn was budgeting. Like I understood that there was going to be money involved, and there was maybe 1 or 2 examples of what your budget be on, and there was a couple things that your budget could be, but no one really gave me like a clear explanation of how to do a budget. In fact, a lot of these times that every church I went to, budgeting was different. Like our executive pastor would sit down with me and tell me, okay, this is what you need to do, this is how much you have, this is what you can break it down for. And it really took just me sitting down with people who have a way bigger budget than mine, that handle it well, and asking them, so where do you put your money and how do you do it? And then asking myself, what do I really need to make my student ministry awesome, and what do I need to actually make it function? And I get it, like my first student ministry, my budget for the year was $1,300. Some of you might be like, how did you even do ministry with that? And some of you are like, I wish I had a budget. Like I'm fundraising for everything. And so I get it, $1,300 either seems like a lot for you, or it seems like nothing. That's like your t-shirt budget for some student ministries. But for me, I had to figure out, how am I going to make $1,300 work for summer camps, winter retreats, shirts, hoodies, events? How am I going to make this happen? And so I learned how to budget. And so I talked to a bunch of people to say, how am I going to do this? Now on the flip side is I have a much larger budget, and now I'm asking myself, what do I do with this money? I want to steward it well. I don't want to just waste it on a bunch of shirts or something stupid like that. I want to make sure I budget my money well in a larger context. And so I asked a bunch of churches that have huge budgets and look at their sheets. I didn't learn this in Bible college. I learned it by asking with other youth pastors what they did, and having that kind of relationship with youth pastors that they don't have to feel like that tension, like, oh, what if they make more money than me? What if they have, like, it's irrelevant. Who cares? Your church makes the budget, how much you make. Let's just talk about it so we can help each other out and make sure we're storing the money that God's given us, that your church has put into your possession to make the wise decision to spend it correctly. Let's talk about it. And that's how I learned how to budget. Number 2 is scheduling. Like, no one told me really the busyness of what ministry was going to be like. In fact, my friend Jeff told me this, is that the moment you start ministry, you realize that you start having way more bowel movements, like, because you're so stressed that you have to go to the bathroom all the time. And I think he was kind of right. No one prepared me for scheduling, and not just scheduling like your daily schedule for the week, but also scheduling like, how do you plan out 6 months ahead for your preaching schedule and your teaching schedule and your small groups and your events. Like a lot of stuff you have to learn. Like, no one told me, by the way, when you plan out your schedule, you should have the school calendar in front of you, so that way you are mindful of spring break and you're mindful of Christmas break. Like, no one told me about that kind of stuff, and realizing how Easter plays into all that, and winter. Like I had to learn all that in the trenches. And so looking at other people's church calendars, especially in the same county or city I'm at, so that way I can look at school calendars and figure out all that kind of stuff. It helped me figure out how to do scheduling. But Bible college didn't prepare me for that. And so, again, those are the type of things where you should be learning in the trenches. It's not easy. It's all about communicating with other youth pastors that can help you with this. For the third one, it's kind of interesting. I took a counseling class in Bible college. It was more counseling students and student issues, but one thing that I noticed that was a bigger issue was counseling parents. One thing that I don't think student ministry really helped me understand was that true youth ministry is going to expand beyond students, and it's going to expand to parents. Holistic youth ministry deals not just with students, but it also is you pastoring parents as they lead their kids towards Jesus. And so I've had so many overwhelming conversations with parents over the past several years. Everything from my kids doing this, they're doing that, they're with these people, and me counseling them and encouraging them. And it's weird sometimes. I remember I was like 23 counseling 40-year-old parents about their kid who is maybe 8 years younger than me and being like, I am not qualified for this. Why am I here? This is ridiculous. And so it took actually failing and messing up and stuttering and just saying, can I just pray for you because I don't have an answer right now, for me to learn what it looks like to counsel parents specifically. I mean, for the most part, a lot of young youth pastors, you're counseling people 10, 20 years older than you. But that's the thing about this position. It doesn't matter about your age. You garner respect by glorifying God with what has been given to you. And so I just go faithfully saying, Lord, this person has a doctorate in whatever field and he's making 6 figures, and yet he's still coming to me asking for wisdom and prayer and advice. And so I'm going to steward that time well. And it took a lot of awkward conversations with parents and me understanding like these are no longer adult figures that I should be intimidated of, but people that I'm supposed to pastor. And so those are one of the things I didn't learn in Bible college is pastoring parents. The fourth one is an interesting one depending on like the kind of student ministry professors you have at your school. I think a constant older trend was that student ministry was in a silo. It was just you and the students and kind of separate from the church, and like the old youth ministry model was very attractional, and now we see this newer youth ministry model that is more integrated with the rest of the body of the church, but also focusing on equipping adult leaders as opposed to you being the one-man band. Now obviously if you're in a smaller church, you might be the one-man band, and for many years I was. It was me and my wife running a bunch of kids, and then I had some volunteers that were there, but now the trend in student ministry I think is a more healthy trend and a more realistic trend is you equipping leaders to do the work of the ministry. And so one thing I didn't really learn in Bible college is to equip my leaders to replace me, to be extensions of the youth pastor, to be me to the kids. Because here's the reality. You're not going to be able to relate to every single kid. Your personality is not going to mesh with every single kid. And there's going to be kids who probably might not like you. But this is where your youth leaders come in. And they say, hey, you're here to equip the leaders, and the leaders do the nitty-gritty with these kids. That doesn't replace you completely where you have no relationship with the kids, even though there are some student ministry models where the youth pastor doesn't really have any face-to-face with the kids outside of preaching. But what it does mean is that you are equipping leaders to be the extension of the youth pastor to these kids, so that when you're with the kids, it's great, but if a kid comes into your youth room and they hug a leader before they hug you, that's still a great win. And so learning how to kind of put myself and my ego to the side and say, I want my leaders to be the champions in this and to have more ownership of the student ministry. That took some kind of rewiring in my brain, because I thought it was all about being this like king and running a youth ministry and I'm the Pastor Frank and everyone else is below me. No, this is about equipping leaders. And so one thing that a Bible college didn't teach me is to equip my leaders to be youth pastors to these kids. And that is a tool that I think we need to keep going. And it's the most, I believe, one of the most successful models of youth ministry is training up these leaders. That you're not just pastoring students, you're not just pastoring parents, but you're also pastoring youth leaders. So that's huge. Make sure you are pastoring your youth leaders. And then the last thing that I would say that Bible college didn't really prepare me for is communications. What I mean by that is website, graphic design, video editing. Like, I wish so badly that in my Bible college, they offered a class for like HTML or just how to make a website or even a basic graphic design course. Because think about how much of an asset you as a youth pastor are by not only being able to do youth ministry, but also to make sick designs and to make awesome videos. I know for many of us in youth ministry that we're kind of bivocational in youth ministry while still being full-time, because your church is asking you to do graphic design work and bulletins and all this stuff. Now that can be dangerous. You can be spread too thin. That happened to me. One of my first youth ministry positions, the reason why I left is because I felt like I was being spread way too thin. I was doing too much of the work of the church when I just wanted to focus on student ministry. But it's that skill level, that skill of doing graphic design and videos and being able to communicate through Instagram and Twitter and all that kind of stuff is a very useful tool, specifically with students, because they eat up that medium way quicker than adults. So I just wish that we learned that in Bible college. So I'm hoping maybe that there might be some universities out there that are watching this and say, hey Frank, we want to bring you in so you can teach our youth pastor majors how to do all the things that you mentioned. And we'll pay you a ton of money because you have student loans. And I would say thank you for understanding. But understand this, if you felt like you entered a ministry a little ill-prepared after Bible college, you're not the only one. We all are. We all were. There's a degree of things that have to be learned in the trenches. You have to learn this stuff and getting dirty and failing. And hopefully you're at a church that allows you to fail. Maybe you were able to get an internship to kind of see and do ministry before you actually graduate. I don't know. But the good news is there are other youth pastors here that have been doing this for much longer than us that you can glean wisdom from and learn from their mistakes and learn from their successes. And that's basically how I did everything I learned. All this stuff I just mentioned is because I talked to other youth pastors, talked to them on Facebook, talked to them in person, took them out to lunch and say, just teach me your ways. And hopefully you can learn your own ways. All right, guys, it was great. Hopefully I'll talk to you next time. God bless.